All right. Good evening, everyone. So let's proceed. Let me quickly cover the last. Let's do summary of the last class. In our last class, I introduced to you guys AWS services, and initially we started with data center or traditional data center. We talk about different components that you can see in a traditional data center, and one of that is your VM, which is normally called compute, which is categorized as compute. You have storage, you have networking, you have firewall appliances, and you have some security tools like firewall and some routing, like those are networkings. So there is a lot of things that you can find in traditional data center. So all of these services that are in traditional data center, the traditional data center itself comes with some challenges. And among these challenges is one, is expensive. Not really that it's expensive, but you have to drop a huge upfront cost. Then the issue of scalability is there because it's a limited space. Data center has a limited capacity or a limited space. So by the time you start putting different IT technology or IT system in there, and it will come to a state that there won't be more space to add more. So if you need more, maybe your customer base increase overnight or your customer base increase due to festive period, or there's a spike, a hike or a spike or any event, then you need to go and get a new data center to put other resources there. So all those costs and limited capacity, which reduce your scalability. And then we have the issue of maintenance, patching. You have to patch most of these systems, you have to maintain it. Then we have security challenges. So all of these are what company doesn't want to really focus on, because everybody wants to do what is actually going to the main business of the company is what they want to focus on, and not that. The main business of the company is like developing application, solve customer issue, and nobody has time to go and be like patching system or dropping a huge amount of money for POC, which is proof of concept. So all of these challenges are what cloud computing addresses. So with cloud computing, it's still cloud, it's still data center, but this kind of data center, you don't manage it. You give it, you only pay for what you need. Another person owns the data center, but you now are putting your resources on the data center that is owned by another person. You are putting your resources on their server. You are putting your resources on their web server, on their database server, on their application server, whichever IT technology that you want to use. If they have it, you just pay for that and you use it. So how do you access the service? You access that service over the internet. So that's why they call cloud computing as on-demand delivery of IT resources over the internet. And the good thing about cloud computing is that, one, you only request for what you need and you only pay for what you use. So that's the issue of cloud computing. The challenges that we have with traditional data center. And also, among the issues that we have with traditional data center is there are some technology that when companies need them, this technology can be complex. So for you or for the data center or the company to employ an expert that can do that particular, or that can work, or that have knowledge about that technology, it might be too expensive for the company. But this cloud provider, because they are big, they have the capacity, so they can easily acquire the service of those experts. And guess what? Indirectly, the services that those experts provide the cloud provider is indirectly flowing to you, the cloud provider the cloud customer. So that's another benefit there. We are going to later today, we're going to see more benefits. I believe that is our main topic of benefits, or the advantage of cloud computing. But before we go in deep, let's proceed for today's class. That's, in summary, what I just explained now are those things that we've covered in our previous class. And please put at the back of your mind, or at the back of your hand, just remember this, that everything that, or majority of things that you can access or that is available in cloud, in traditional data center, they are still available in cloud. But with cloud, they are now virtualized. Virtualized in the sense that you are not, or you can't touch them physically, but they are still there. The same process still applies. If you go to a traditional data center, if you see a server, you can connect to the server. You can save files on the server, you can create folders on the server, you can patch the server. Exactly the same thing you can do on cloud. But this time around, you are doing it virtually. So if you have knowledge of data center, that knowledge is still much relevant. So let's proceed for today's class. I think we talked about this. And another thing that we discussed in our previous class is cloud deployment. There are 3 different cloud deployment models. We have the public cloud, private cloud, and we have the hybrid. The public cloud is a general cloud that is available for everybody to use. Like the cloud provider, they create a cloud environment and anybody can request for service and use service on that public cloud. Then a company might want a private dedicated cloud. They might create it as their home cloud, or they might request the service of all these giant cloud providers to create that service for them, but the service is only for them. It's only for the company that requests for it. So a third party or a public entity or a public customer cannot use what they created for a private company. Then we have the form of hybrid, which means a company might have some of their resources in the cloud and the remaining resources on-prem or in their own private data center. So when they use these 2 services together, or these 2 different cloud deployments, that is what we refer to as hybrid. That is they use both of them together. One challenge that companies normally face when they are using hybrid is how to connect these 2 services together. And this is one of the services that we're going to be talking about. How do you connect on-prem resources together with the cloud resources? So this is a very, 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 very important topic. And when we get to networking, we are going to be discussing this. Okay, let's proceed from here. So AWS Cloud Essential Module 1, which we already talked about. So let me go to this. Sorry about this. We talk about cloud computing, and also remember the concept of client to server communication. When you have a client laptop or a client computer that want to talk to a server, the request, the traffic, the initial request that is sent to the server is called the request. And when the server responds, the server response is normally referred to as response. So that's why we have a request and response. Later down the line in the class, we're going to be talking about what actually happened when his client sent information and this respond. There is a lot of things that go on in between this. At least when the system, when the traffic is going, a lot of things happened. And when it's coming back, a lot of things happen. And there is a technology they normally use for this, which is called the OSI model. And this OSI model is of seven layers. Let's just call this is a person. And this person wants to send message to this another person. The message has to pass through 7 layers before it got to this person. And those 7 layers, they are very, very important, especially when you are dealing with networking. You know, networking is when you connect two systems together or two or more systems together. So when you connect two or more systems together, they are sharing information. One is sending message, the another one is receiving it, and is responding back. So that going back and forth, a lot of things, they have to pass that message they are sending. Let's say this is the package they are sending. This package has to pass through these 7 layers. And that is what they call the USI model. I'm going to be explaining that when we get to the networking part. So I'm not going to use that to waste our time here. But when we get to the networking part, I'll be explaining it. And it is going to be very good if you can just go out there and make research about this topic before the class. And if you go to our website, there is a particular, I think last batch I talked about this, or some of the free video on our website, I talk about this, so you can watch it there too. But I'll still be explaining it when we get to the class, when we get there rather. We explained all of this last week, so that's why I'm not talking about them. Okay, I think this is where we are. Yeah, AWS cloud value proposition. This is more like cloud advantages of the cloud. And if you are going to do the AWS cloud practitioner, this is one of the topics that you cannot escape. AWS will surely ask you. This does not mean that when you get to job or you are going for an interview, they'll be asking you what is an advantages of AWS. That's why I don't deal with all of this for interview prep. So, but if you are doing the cloud practitioner exam, then be expecting question on that date. That's why I always tell people, passing certification does not mean you can do the job, because there are two different things. AWS, the certification is just testing your knowledge about the technology. That do you know what this means? Can you do this? Can you use this? When a customer is having an issue, can you provide a service for them? But in reality, you are actually using it, and that is what you should be learning. I'm not saying certification is not good. At least it's going to give you some edge, but you need to learn how to actually use it, how to solve problems with the particular service. So AWS cloud value proposition, which in turn or indirectly means the advantage and disadvantage, the advantage of value of AWS. What are the benefits of AWS or cloud computing in general? Well, the first benefit of cloud computing is that, am I recording? Guys, am I recording the class? I can't see.
Yes.
Okay, thanks. So the first benefit of the AWS or cloud computing in general is that you turn a fixed expense to a variable expense. when we talk about traditional data center, one of the disadvantage or challenge is that you have to spend an upfront cost. That is the initial money you use either to rent the warehouse or to buy all the servers or to buy all the networking tools. Those are upfront costs. But with AWS now or any of the cloud, I'm not buying any server, so I'm not spending any money upfront. I'm not renting warehouse. That means I'm not spending any fixed expense. So you trade your fixed expense, you trade it for variable expense, or we call operational expense. That's the first thing. That huge amount gets wiped out first, because it's just like you want to, maybe you get a new job today and you have to drive to the place. So you have two options. The first option is for you to go and buy your own car. And the second option is to take Uber. So taking Uber now has prevent you, or is going for, if you take Uber or if you decide to be taking Uber, that means you are trading your fixed expense to variable expense. The fixed expense is if you have bought your own car, that is going to be a fixed expense, because that means you are going to cough out huge amount of money initially. How do I spell expense? Okay. That means you are going to cough out huge amount of money. But if you are taking Uber, guess what? You only pay maybe $8, right? So this is variable expense. So that is also the same concept in the cloud. If you are using cloud, you only pay for the service you are using, and you don't pay for the entire infrastructure. So that's the first thing. The second one is the benefits from massive economy of scale. What does this mean? A lot of you, when you want to buy something, especially the women among you, when they want to buy something, they always look for, hey, let's go and buy this thing together, because they know that when you buy in bulk, it's going to be cheaper. So that is economic of scale. If, let's say I want to buy, let's say I want to buy clothes now. I can go out and buy just one clothes for myself alone. But let's say Don say, hey, if you buy this clothes by yourself alone, it's going to be expensive. Why not let everybody in this class contribute money and go and buy in bulk or in wholesale? So when you buy in units or in retail, they're going to sell it for you in retail price, and this might cost, like, let's say this costs like $50 per one. But if you want to buy in bulk, you can talk to one manufacturer from China, and they say, okay, if you are going to make the same quality of clothes for you, the same thing, if you are going to do 100 units, we can do it for you at the rate of $5 per one. So if you are doing $500 per one for 100 clothes, that is how much? $500. But if you are buying the same 100 in retail price, how much is that? 5,000. So it's always good to buy in bulk. So how does this relate to economic of scale in the cloud? Majority of these cloud providers, they are rich. When they want to buy the infrastructure that they need for data center, they are not buying it in pieces. They are not buying just one server. They are not buying one router for networking. They are not buying one firewall. They may buy 10,000 at once. They may buy 2,000 at once. So what does this mean? if they are buying in bulk, the manufacturer will produce for them at bulk price. Maybe the server, that one server might cost like $20,000. But if they are buying in bulk, they may say one server is just 4,000. So when they buy like 10,000 server for 4,000, that means they are going to be saving a lot of money. Let's say that they're going to save 50,000. Indirectly, you, the cloud customer, you are benefiting from this amount they are saving. You are benefiting from this 50,000 they are saving. Because if you are to go out and buy one by yourself, you are going to buy it to 20,000. But guess what? You are not buying it, you are just using it now. So that indirectly, that's why I say indirectly, because they are, when they say 50,000, they are not going to give you your own share. But indirectly, because you are using that same service that they bought cheap, you are benefiting from this economic of scale. I hope that is understandable, right? The next one is cost optimization. AWS customers only pay for what they use and can easily remove or reduce unused capacity in the cloud. So we can now optimize our cost. What is not necessary, we are not using it. So initially, if you buy your own server, either you use it or you don't use it, you've already spent the money. Let me just say spend money. You already spent the money. Then the server is occupying space. So you're also paying for the space. And you have to also provide security, because you can't put it outside. You have to provide security. So there is a lot of, apart from the actual cost that was spent to buy the server, there is a lot of indirect expense that you are also incurring. So all of this, because you are not buying your own physical server, you are only using a server that somebody has already bought. So you are only paying for the service you are using. So if I have an application that wants to run on a server, instead of me having my own server, I'll just put my application on the cloud server. So what does that mean? I'm only paying for the small size or small place I'm putting my information or my application. So guess what? I'm not wasting unnecessary money to buy a server. The space that the server is occupying, I'm not going to pay for that. Then the security that is protecting the server, the physical server, I'm not paying for it because it's not my own physical server. So indirectly and directly, I'm optimizing a lot of my cost. I can now direct the cost or the amount that I'm supposed to spend here. I can direct it to make sure my application runs better, to make sure that I provide more features for my application. I can use that money to bring in some experienced developer. So you can now see that I'm optimizing my money. Then the next one is you stop guessing capacity. If you are to, let's say as December is coming now, let's say you have a small business that provide, let's say you have a small business that provide, what can we say? You do you sell items online. Maybe you do some e-commerce. So because currently you just started and a lot of people started knowing you, so you have two servers that is serving your website. And on that website, that is where people order your products. So because Christmas is coming, you now say, oh, a lot of people is going to buy from you. Then you went, that means you have to guess because you don't know. Either your customer is going to increase because of the coming holiday or not. But guess what? You just have to guess that, okay, it's going to increase. By how many? You don't know. Then another guess that you're going to be doing, you're also going to be guessing like, okay, currently I have 100 customers. And this 100 customer, if all of them help me to advertise my products, that means at least let's just say each one of them tell two other person. I mean, each one of them tell two person. That means maximum, that is 100 plus 200 people. That is okay. I should be expecting at least 300 because I always tell my customer, hey, please reference me. So that means it's going to be guessing that, okay, my customer base might increase by 200 to 300. So it's going to provision based on the guest capacity, based on guest capacity. But guess what? Maybe these people that bought from her, they don't even like the products. So they are not marketing her. So when the Christmas period comes, the extra machine, extra server that she has bought, nobody is using it because it's still these 100 people that are still a customer. So it is only these 100 people that will still be buying from her. So that means the extra server that it gets for is not going to be used. So this is why it's not good to guess capacity. So what she did here, it guessing of capacity. But if this is really on the physical data center or on our own data center, but if he is or she is actually using cloud, guess what? He has 100 people. He's going to, let's say he's using AWS. He's only going to create server on AWS for 100 people. So he's only paying AWS for these two servers. Then if, fortunately, this 100 customer help her to advertise her products and the 100 customer now turn to 300, guess what? She doesn't have to provision the server before those customers come. It's when the customer actually come, the cloud can automatically create more server for her. So as the customer base is increasing, they are increasing the server that she has. You just have to make an arrangement like, hey, if more than 100 customer comes to access my server or my service or my website, immediately there are 200 immediately there are more than 200, please create another server for me. So if we arrange this down before the customer comes, but guess what? The cloud will not create it, but they will be expecting those customers to come. Immediately the customer arrives, they are going to create one. They are going to spin one immediately. Then when the customer more than 200 and they are more than 250, immediately they are 300, they are going to create one more. Guess one thing, one way that, one advantage here is that these 200, let's say it's now 300 customers that are accessing our website. Immediately the customers start reducing, maybe from 300 now, they now turn to 250. The cloud will terminate one. It will terminate one of the server. So she will not be paying for the server that nobody is using. Immediately the customer reduce from 250 to 200, they terminate another one. And they will now leave these two because that is the two that she wants to be running at any point in time. But this next two, they will only be creating if customer comes and immediately the customer go, they will terminate it. So we can see how they are saving money here. But compare that to on-prem data center, either the customer use it or the customer do not use it, either the customer come or not. She has bought the server She has to keep the server and she has to continue maintaining the server apart from the upfront cost she has incurred. Does that make sense? Okay, when I don't get response, I believe everybody in the class is sleeping.
Yes, it makes a lot of sense.
Just wake up.
Yeah, here. Yeah, here.
Okay, you guys, somebody just tap you. Wake up, wake up. We're talking to you.
Wake up.
Like a day I was in the office. I was attending a meeting, then I slept off. And they are calling my name. I didn't know. It's my wife that come and tap me like, hey, wake up, they are calling you. Maybe that's what you guys are doing too. All right. So let me clear this screen. So now you understand this, and this. The next one is increased speed and agility. What does this mean? If you buy your own server is not like laptop that you just go and buy and you can start using it immediately. Some server, when you order it, they might tell you that they don't have it, that they're going to deliver it in 2 to 3 weeks. Then once they deliver the server in 2 to 3 weeks, let's just say 7 days, then you need to configure this server. So that configuration, let's say that take 1 day. And you need to deploy your application, you test it before your application is ready. Let's say the whole of that take like 3 days. That is 11 days. This is on the bare minimum, like so fast, because some might take more than that, some might take months. What does that mean? If you have an idea, like, oh, you have customer base and you are just trying to think about an idea, and you are like, okay, can we test this if it's going to work? Maybe you just conceive an idea. Maybe yesterday there was a political debate. Maybe because of that political debate, you now quickly think like, hey, I can create something based on this political debate. And guess what? You now tell somebody to create you a website. Let's say the developer is so fast, he creates the website immediately. Then for you to deploy the website that he created for you, then that means you have to wait for 11 days for you to deploy that server. But somebody somewhere also conceived the same idea, and he also talked to a developer. His own developer developed the application or the website immediately, and he just, because he's using cloud, he can just spin up cloud immediately, spin up a server immediately, and put his resources, his website there. Guess what is happening? People will start patronizing him or accessing his own website before yours. Even your own is not even ready because it still has to take 11 days. But his own is available, maybe in the next 2 days, his own is available. So guess what? They will believe that he is the owner of the idea and you just came back to steal from him or her. Meanwhile, you are the first person that conceived the idea. So because we are using on-prem data center, there is limits to how quick you can go when it comes to deployment. So that's why when in the cloud, your developers, the guys that are developing for you, when they are testing some maybe they have an application that they are developing and they want to test the application whether it's working or not. They just go to an AWS, they go to the development environment, they spin up a server and they test their application on the development server. So that makes the work faster. They can test it like, oh, it's not working on Windows, but they can then open another server on Linux or Linux they test the application, they're like, oh, it's working on Linux, but it's not working on Windows. So they can modify the application to work on both. But if it is on-prem, like a physical server, they have to come to you. They have to request for permission to buy or to order for a server. You have to order for the server. When the server comes, you have to configure it before they put all this waste time. So that is why cloud is so good. With AWS cloud services, AWS customers spend less time to acquire and manage infrastructure that they need for running their application in the cloud. AWS customers focus on their application features and business logic that delivers value to their customers, instead of you spending countless time or sleepless hour trying to figure, okay, which server should we order, going to online to order it, waiting for it to come. You can spend all those time in perfecting the features of your website or your application or the business logic. And the last one is you go global in minutes. What does this mean? It means that with cloud, let's say you have your customer base is in USA. And because of social media, people from Chinese or China, they now started seeing your products. They like the products. And guess what? They now started requesting on your website. Or let's say people from Europe, they now started requesting services from your website. One thing that is going to happen here, one, when somebody from Europe is trying to access your application that is in US, the application will not be as fast as if it is being accessed by somebody in US. They call this latency. The latency will not be fast. Secondly, there are a lot of policy, especially in Europe. Example of them is GDPR, that a customer or a company must apply to or must comply with if you are dealing with European citizens. The data that you generate or the data that you collected from an European citizen, before you can store it outside of Europe, there are a lot of things that you must do. The customer, you must inform the customer that you are storing their data, and there is a lot of other policies that you must comply with for you to be comply with GDP. So if you don't want to go through that stress, you might like, okay, what if you actually create a server or you deploy another server in Europe? So that means you are going to, you will need to go to Europe, maybe in Italy, France, or wherever. Then you're going to buy or rent a warehouse, and you are going to deploy your server in Europe. Then that means you are now global. Let's compare this with cloud. The cloud provider, they already have data centers in Europe. They have data centers in Europe. And they have data center in US. So if you are using cloud, if you are serving US customer, all you just need to do is to, is to deploy the server in US environment or in the data center that is in US. Now that you want to serve European citizen, guess what? You just deploy your server in Europe. And what does that mean? You can go global within seconds or minutes. And that's what they mean by go global in minutes. So you don't have to travel to Europe to go and buy a warehouse, because if you are traveling to Europe, you have to go to Europe. You have to like maybe talk to agent to help you to look for a good warehouse, then start setting up the warehouse. All those waste time. So that is the benefits and the value proposition of AWS cloud computing. Any question? No? Good.
No, for now.
Okay. So these are just, when you are reading this, all these are just like example that I've already explained. So these are just what I've explained. So you can read it. You can read all of them. This go by in minutes. So you can read all of them. I'm not going back there. So when we talk about cloud computing, and I said this when we started the cloud, I said every service or component that you can find in your traditional data center, you can also find it in the cloud. Even you can find more in the cloud. When I say cloud or people say cloud, always remember that cloud is also another data center, but the only thing that is different is that it is not you, the customer zone, that you are not the owner of the data center, and you can only access the data center on the internet, through the internet. So that is just the difference. Every other thing, they are the same. It's cloud. I mean, it's data center, but you are just not the owner of the data center. You are deploying your resources to other people's data center over the internet. So let's look at some main data center services. Though we checked this before, I think in our first class, but let's look at them again. There are a lot of services, but these are the main services that you can find in the traditional data center. You can find compute. What we mean by compute is your VM, your server. You can find networking. All these VM, every other technology devices, all of them are connected together. They share the same IP address range. So that is networking. So you can see some devices for networking, like your router, your switch. You can see them in your data center. Then some storage, you also find them in data center. Some management and governance, those are policies. Data center have their own policies. Like if you are going to a data center, you have to like log your name, you have to pass through security, there must be camera, the server must be patched. All those things, they are governance and secure and government and management. So it's present in data center. We have a lot of database and some security tools like firewall, like IDP and IDS, intrusion prevention service and intrusion detection on devices. All of these are in data center. Are they in the cloud? Absolutely yes. But instead of them being physical, they are now what? Virtualized. Meaning that you will now be accessing them in a virtual environment. So the next thing we are going to look at now is, what are these services called in AWS or in the cloud? So when you get to the cloud, you will also see all of these services. So our compute that we referred to earlier as VM or server is also in the cloud. But in AWS call their own VM or server, they call it EC2 instance. So it's just the name that changed, and now they are now virtualized instead of being physical. Networking tools. In data center, you will see networking devices, route, switch, and all those things. In AWS, you are also going to see it, but it is called VPC, Virtual Private Cloud. And under this VPC, there are a lot of services that we're going to discuss. In AWS, we have storage too. AWS, one of the main storage that we're going to discuss is called S3 buckets. Then those management and governance, you have them in the cloud. You have what is called CloudWatch. You have a lot of other management and governance services too. We have the database, you have RDS, you have DynamoDB, and some security tools like IAM, CSP, like the GuardDuty. All of these, they are now virtualized. So they are present as physical on-prem, but in the cloud, they are now virtualized. And one of the security that is also virtualized is your firewall, which AWS call either ACL or security group. And there are a lot of firewall in AWS too. So now, over the period of the 1 month section, you are going to be seeing a lot of these different services, and you are going to be interacting with them. So these are the main AWS service. So this is where we are going to stop for tonight's class, because our class is just 1 hour today. But before we stop for today's class, there are 2 things that we need to do, and this might take us some minutes. I apologize for that. First, we have a knowledge check. I don't know if you guys want to do it or if you just want to pass it by. The knowledge check is just for us to check, okay, what we've covered from possibly from second day up to today, just to check your knowledge. And majority of these are what is in the cloud practitioner exam. So do you guys want us to quickly go through this?
Yes, please.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, yes. So second thing that we're also going to do, but this one, you need to create your own AWS account. If you don't have AWS account, you have to create your own before the next class. So I'm going to post a video to the YouTube, how to create an AWS class. It's one of our previous videos. So just watch that video. It's 30-minute video on how to create your own AWS account. And another means, if you go to our Telegram, there is also a document that I shared last batch on how to create AWS accounts. If you go to the TheCornelis Inc. Telegram, I don't know why this is not. Where's my Telegram? Okay, it's coming up. Yeah. So if you go to the files here, you see it here, AWS account creation. If you open it, you can also follow this document. But when I was checking it yesterday, AWS have changed the interface a little bit. You might not see the sign in to console again there. You might be seeing something different like create AWS account, but it's still, the document is still valid. But the video is actually still correct. So you can actually watch the video or you can use this document. So before next class, please open your AWS account. Don't let us waste time for that, because if I have to teach that in the class, that is going to take another 30 minutes. So we can use that 30 minutes for something else. All right. Those are the only 2 things that I want us to do before the next class. So let's quickly go through this. And I think it should take us like 10 minutes. Then we call it a day. So knowledge check. What is cloud computing? You will read the option. I'm not going to read the option
B.
for you. Let me the correct one.
B.
B, because I mistakenly answered it earlier. B. You have seen. Yeah, you think I don't know?
You taught us well.
Yeah, you just pretend as if it doesn't see like, oh, you sure it's B. Now quickly say B. Okay, this is not part of your answer. All right, let's proceed. The second one. What is another name for on-premises deployment?
Private deployment.
B. B
On-premises
as well.
development is B.
Private
It's
development.
private. When you deploy application, infrastructure in your private environment, that's private deployment. There's nothing called offsite
Offsite.
hosting. Cloud compute is on the cloud. Virtual networking is not. What are the three types of cloud deployment modules?
Public, private,
A.
hybrid.
A.
Development model involves a cloud
A single
infrastructure
organization.
exclusively used by
C.
a single
C.
C.
organization.
Private cloud.
That's private cloud because it's because of the word exclusively used
By
private-
that
Single.
exclusively used by a single organization. That's private.
Sorry, I have a question regarding this, please. Sorry. So
All right.
I just need a few clarification. Is a private cloud restricted to on-prem deployment, or a client can also, request for private cloud, like
Yeah.
virtually?
So it's either of the two. A client can request AWS like, okay, can you come and set up a cloud architecture, a cloud infrastructure on our own premises, only for them alone. And some company too, they can create their own private cloud without going to any of this, because you can create your own private cloud too. So the main thing there is that it is not being used by the public. It is meant for that customer alone, and it is on the customer premises or their own data center. So that is it there. And if you look at every other thing here, is the only closest option. It's not public cloud. Public cloud is the cloud that is generally available for everybody. Either you, me, anybody can use public cloud. Then we have hybrid, which is half and half. You have some resources on-prem and you have some resources in the cloud. You use both of them. And the third one is private. It is being used by a customer only, either in their own premises. Majorly is always in their own premises, or they have their own separate data center where they have the resources. And clients to server deployment is nothing like that. And also, for those of you that are going to be writing any of the AWS solution, any of the AWS certificate, always try to do elimination method. There are some answers that they are not related to the question at all. First, eliminate those ones. So you are now left with similar question, similar option or related option. Then it's easy to compare within 2 than comparing within 4. Hybrid cloud deployment module are primarily known for
C.
B.
C.
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 When you talk about hybrid cloud,
Hybrid
you are
cloud.
combining on-prem infrastructure with
A cloud
service,
service. Right.
C.
which is a financial advantage of cloud computing.
B. B.
B.
B. I mean, you pay as you go
B.
price models.
Mhm.
Only pay for what you use.
My waist is paining me.
Oh, sorry. All right, that's the end of module 1. Any question? All right, if there is no question for module 1, I mean, no question for me. So our next topic is the module 2, which is where we're going to talk about the AWS global infrastructure. Remember when we talk about go global in minutes and also said stop getting capacity, especially go global in minutes. This time, that is where this part is how we're going to learn where are AWS data centers, where do AWS create or build their data centers, where can you deploy your resources. So this is where we're going to be talking about different states, continents, states, area that you can deploy your AWS resources, where AWS have data centers, so that when you want to deploy your resources, this is the first thing that you must know. If you want to deploy any resources, you must pick which location, which geographical location do you want the resources to be deployed in. Do you want to create the resources in the US? Do you want to create it in Asia? Do you want to create it in Africa? Do you want to create it in Europe? Those are the first thing you need to know. And for you to know that, you must know where AWS have their data centers so that you know where to put your resources. And that is what we're going to be discussing under AWS Global Infrastructure. All right. If there's no more questions, I want to appreciate you guys also again today for coming to the class and for participating. I enjoyed spending time with you guys. I hope you guys learn 1 or 2 things today. All right. Bye, guys.
Thank you.
All right, bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Appreciate
Yeah,
you.
don't forget to watch the video. And if you already have AWS accounts before, don't bother. This is only for those that do not have AWS account. So I'm going to upload this video and the how to create AWS account video. Please make sure you have AWS account before our next class. And the next class is Saturday, which is from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Central Time. We're still using the same Zoom link. We are using the same Zoom link. So, and you are free to share the class to anybody that wants to join. It's free. We are not collecting money. All right. Bye, guys.
Bye. Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.